Learn English with the News lesson, we'll review a news article on Donald Trump's recent visit to China to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping. As we read the article, you'll improve all areas of your English by learning advanced words, phrases, grammar, and pronunciation. Welcome back to JForrest English. Of course, I'm Jennifer. Now let's get started. Our headline: Trump and Xi conclude very successful talks in Beijing, but no deals announced. So first, notice conclude. This is a more formal way of saying end. Trump and Xi end very successful talks. Talks in this sense is not a verb to talk. She talks to her mom every day. Talks represents meetings. So in this case, it's a noun. Very successful talks, very successful meetings in Beijing, but no deals announced. Now, this is the short form, which is commonly used in headlines because an auxiliary verb is missing. Do you know what it would be? But no deals. So deals is plural. So you can say no deals were announced because this structure is the passive voice. To be announced by Trump or Xi or the US or China. But no deals were announced. Or you could also use, but no deals have been announced. So that is still the verb be, but is conjugated in the present perfect form because it references that this hasn't happened until now. But because this is an ongoing time reference, the two could announce next week that a deal was reached, they just didn't share it. So you could say were announced or have been announced. Don't worry about taking these notes. I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF. You can find the link in the description. Now let's keep reading this article together. US President Donald Trump's closely watched visit. So here the noun is visit. Donald Trump's visit. So that's why you have this apostrophe S, because the visit is possessive. It belongs to Donald Trump. So all of this gives information about who Donald Trump is. And then this part gives you more information about the visit. So they function as adjectives. Donald Trump's closely watched visit to China this week has gone. So here, notice our present perfect because there's a result in the present. So the meeting is over. Donald Trump is back in the US, but there's a result in the present. And that's why they're using the present perfect here. Has gone a long way toward strengthening. So notice the sentence structure for this is to go. And your verb go is conjugated based on the subject and time reference. So in this case, the subject is the meeting. So all of this, the visit, the meeting, functions as the subject. It has gone. Because the subject is not Donald Trump. The subject is the visit. And then all of this is additional information, and all of this is additional information. So the visit has gone. It has gone. It has gone a long way toward. And then your verb in ing. Now this means it has helped do that action to a large degree. You might say learning English with the news. So all of this is the subject. As one of the 5 subjects, it would be it. It has gone. So this is our verb go conjugated in the present perfect with the subject. Has gone a long way toward. So these words do not change. And then you need your verb in the gerund form because toward is a preposition. Learning English with the news has gone a long way toward expanding my vocabulary. So it simply means it has helped. It has helped to a large degree. So it has really, really helped. It's a more natural way to use a fixed expression to explain that. So what do you think? Has learning English with the news gone a long way toward expanding your vocabulary? If it has, then put that's right, put that's right in the comments because that's exactly why you're doing this. Now let's review this again. So has gone a long way towards strengthening a fragile trade truce. So a truce is, let's say we're arguing about something. A truce would be, I'm not going to argue anymore. You're not going to argue anymore. So we will temporarily stop arguing or stop whatever negative behavior we were doing. And we do that because we want to find a solution. But until we do find that solution, we agree to be civil, to not provoke the conflict further. So that is the trade truce. So they agreed to temporarily stop whatever negative behavior they were doing. A fragile though. So it sounds like, oh, this truce, it may not last long because it's described as fragile. And if something is fragile, means it can be easily broken or damaged. So here they're using it more metaphorically to describe the truce. A fragile trade truce with Beijing and stabilizing. Okay, so stabilizing. Why is this in the ing form? Because, and it's the same grammar as before. So has gone a long way toward strengthening, has gone a long way toward stabilizing the bilateral relationship. So bi means two. We have US, China. So relationship between the two. Stabilize, if something is stabilized, it means it's stable. So non-stable, well, we can think of this as stable. So stabilizing the bilateral relationship.
Are you enjoying this lesson? If you are, then I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers from TV, movies, YouTube, and the news so you can improve your listening skills of fast English, expand your vocabulary with natural expressions, and learn advanced grammar easily. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for the link to learn more, or you can go to my website and click on Finally Fluent Academy. Now let's continue with our lesson.
While the visit was delayed by more than a month due to the Iran war. Okay, so here our sentence structure is to be delayed. So if it's more than a month, it means it was originally supposed to happen more than a month ago. Now you can use delayed in an everyday context, but remember it's to be delayed because you're using it in the passive voice if you are the subject and you say, sorry, I will be delayed, or sorry, I was delayed. Sorry, the project will be delayed. Now, you can use this in the active form and say, traffic delayed us. So traffic is the thing doing the action. The new timeline delayed us. The client request delayed us. We were delayed because of the client request. So you can use it in the active voice as well, but it's commonly used in the passive voice. While the visit was delayed by more than a month, by because of the time reference, by more than a month due to the Iran war. You could also say because of the Iran war. So due to, because of, not in every context, but in this context, because it's followed by a noun, you can use either one. Trump's 2-day summit. So notice again, the apostrophe S tells you it's possessive. So our noun is summit. Summit is another word for a formal meeting. So you can think of it as a meeting. Trump's 2-day summit, Trump's 2-day meeting. So this is your noun. 2-day, this functions as an adjective, which is why there's a dash between them and also why there is no S on day, because there are no singular plural forms for adjectives. That only applies to nouns, but this is not a noun, it's an adjective. So Trump's 2-day summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping wrapped up Friday. So this is a phrasal verb, to wrap up, and this is in the past simple because it's a completed past action, wrapped up Friday. Wrap up is a more casual way of saying ended Friday. It's interesting that they use a more a casual way when in the headline they used a more formal, because you could say Trump and Xi wrapped up very successful talks, which would be casual every day. End is in the middle between casual and between formal, and then conclude sounds quite formal. Regardless of which one you use, wrap up and conclude, technically you need the preposition on before the day of the week, on Friday, on Monday, on Tuesday. It's very common in casual speech to omit the preposition, and it is common in journalism as well, where often information is condensed because the number of words matter. In this case, I wouldn't say the number of words matter. It's just more of a casual thing to leave out the preposition. But grammatically, if you are preparing for your IELTS or doing any formal writing, you must use the preposition on Friday. So I would just get comfortable using it because it is standard. Wrapped up on Friday with plans for another meeting this fall. Now, interesting, if there's going to be another meeting, if it's related to the first meeting, you could say for another follow-up meeting this fall. You can use follow-up, which in this case would function as an adjective. It would describe the meeting. You can use that when a second meeting has been scheduled, but the second meeting must relate to the first meeting. If the second meeting is on an entirely different topic and no reference to the first meeting, then it is just a second meeting. It is not a follow-up meeting. So keep that in mind. Let's keep reading. The US and Chinese sides. So notice here, it's the sides. Now, we have the US side, the Chinese side. So here, it's relating to the US's perspective, point of view, and then relating to China's perspective, point of view. That would be one side, the other side. So the US and Chinese sides, plural, because both of them combined, sides, have not yet released details. Now, the present perfect suggests that these details may be released in the future, because in this case, the present perfect is being used for an action with an unfinished time reference. So it implies that it's still possible for these details to be released in the future. If that were not the case, then it would be the past simple. So the US and Chinese sides didn't release details on specific agreements. That sounds more complete. But now we may keep watching this story to see if details are released. And notice the use of the preposition on. So you can request details on something. Jennifer, can you share more details on your teaching methodology, for example? Or can you share more details on the Finally Fluent Academy? Well, you can find those details on my website. So just look for the link in the description. Or if you have any specific questions, just ask. I'm happy to answer them. So don't forget that preposition, details on specific agreements. But Trump's invitation to Xi to visit the US. Okay, Trump's invitation to Xi. This means that Trump invited Xi to visit the US, because the invitation belongs to Trump, but this preposition to means the invitation is actually going to Xi. So Xi is receiving the invitation which originated from Donald Trump. So, but Trump's invitation to Xi
to visit the US. So this is the purpose of the invitation, to visit the US on September 24th. Now notice they wrote it in short form. So short form, you use either the first 3 letters or the first 4 letters, and optional, you can put a period or not, but September 24th, because this is an ordinal number, even though they don't have the little th. I love that little th that goes right there. You would still pronounce it as September 24th, because it's not correct to say September 24, because that's not how we say the days of the month. We use the ordinal number, September 24th. On September 24th means the 2 leaders can talk in person, again, before the expiration of the 1-year trade truce set in October 2025. So here we have more information on that truce. Remember, a truce is an agreement to not actively fight or to temporarily end an argument, conflict, or disagreement. So it sounds like Trump and Xi said, okay, for 1 year, we will not have any arguments, disagreements, or debates relating to trade. But that's going to expire October 2026, because 1 year. Now this, you already know why there's no S and why there's this dash here, is because it functions as an adjective and it gives you more information about the truce, the trade truce set in October 2025. So set in, this is when they agreed to the truce. Notice here also they're using the noun form, expiration. What's the verb? Expire. So as the verb, you could say the trade truce expires in October 2026. If I knew the specific day, what would change in the sentence structure? The trade truce expires on October 15th, 2026. So in October, on October 16th. So you absolutely could use the verb form, not necessarily in this sentence because you would have to change the sentence, but it's very common to use the verb. And here, the expiration, this is viewing it as a thing. Remember, a noun is a thing. So instead of an action, the truce expires, it's a something, the expiration. So it sounds more dramatic viewing it as a thing. If you wanted to use the verb form, so here we have the noun, if you wanted to use the verb and make as few changes as possible, you could start here. So everything would be the same before this star, and then say before the 1 year trade truce set in October 2025 expires. So notice as the verb, it would come at the very, very end, but as the noun, it can come before, which highlights it more. If I wanted to make a few other changes, I could say before the 1 year trade truce expires in October 2026. So rather than talking about when it was set, I can talk about when it expires. Now, if I make this change, my verb will come sooner in the sentence, which emphasizes it more. And it's obvious that it was set in October 2025 because it's a 1 year trade deal and then it expires in October 2026. So logically, you just subtract a year. So that information is already there. Now, remember I said if you have a specific day of the week, it's on October 15th, 2026. Let's keep reading. The agreement, so this is the trade truce, the one set in October 2025. The agreement lowered tariffs and rolled back. So if you roll back, it means that those restrictions were there. So roll back the something. The something is rare earth restrictions. To be honest, I don't know what these restrictions are. Perhaps you do. But restrictions, so things you cannot do related to rare earth. So things in our natural environment, maybe this is about minerals or agriculture, for example, or oil. So roll back, it means that these restrictions were up here in a severity, so least severe, most severe. Now, if you roll it back, it means you reduce the severity of those restrictions. So you make them less severe, reduce the severity, and rolled back rare earth restrictions after an escalation in tensions. So if tensions were here, then the escalation means the tensions increased. So they became worse, more severe. After an escalation in tensions, and in tensions is another way of saying there's conflict, there's disagreement, there's argument between the two countries earlier in 2025. Now that tension got so bad that they agreed to a truce, gave themselves a little break. Let's keep reading. She said the US and China agreed to constructive strategic stability. So remember, they talked about stability before. So if things were like this, they wanted it to get to this state, more balanced, steadier, less likely to change. And strategic meaning that it's helpful for both parties. So that would be strategic. Strategic stability as a framework for the next 3 years, according to Chinese state media. Let's keep reading. Opening remarks and readouts offer no details beyond China's pledge to open up its market further to foreign business. Okay, a readout is a summary of a meeting after it's happened. This is commonly used in a business context and in a political context as well. So opening remarks, this is a speech that Donald Trump prepared or a speech that President Xi prepared at the beginning, okay? Opening remarks. Now, a readout, that would be the summary of the full meeting. But of course, just the general public, we may not have access to all information because much of it is private or meant for only certain people to have that information. So in this case, it seems like there are not a lot of details that were made available in this readout. So opening remarks and readouts offered no details beyond China's pledge. So beyond, it means that this detail was included. And the detail being China's pledge to open up its market. So pledge, we will do this. We promise to do this. It's our pledge to you. So a commitment, a promise in a business context, a political context, even in nonprofit organizations, they often use this language, pledge. China's pledge to open up. So if China opens up its market, it means it makes its economy, where the market exists, accessible to other people or to other businesses. And in this case, being specific to foreign business. But they added the word further, which is an important word because it implies that this has already happened and is going to happen more, which has occurred gradually over recent decades. So 1 decade is a period of 10 years. So if decade is plural, which it is, it means a minimum of 20 years that this time reference is. But it could be 30 or 40, because if you add one more decade, you're adding 10 years. Right? So keep that in mind. It's a minimum of 20 years, but it could be 30, 40, 50 or more. So this part emphasizes this further because this is an example of how it has already happened. And further means more than now. Let's keep reading. The war in Iran loomed large. So if something looms large, it means that its existence was very obvious. So as they're having these meetings,
it's on everyone's mind, or it's just a topic of constant conversation as well. So loomed large. So in an everyday context, you might say, my upcoming IELTS exam is looming large. It means that even though the exam isn't here now, and even if you're having a conversation with your friend, you still just keep thinking about it, or it's always on your mind, or your friend is asking you about it, or you're talking about it. So it's constantly on your mind or a topic of conversation. Now, keep in mind, loom is your verb. So in my example, I use it in the present continuous. My IELTS exam is looming large. Now it's in the past simple. So you might say my IELTS exam loomed large while I was on vacation. You're supposed to be relaxing, enjoying the beach, or going to a show or going on a tour, but you just keep thinking about your IELTS exam, or people keep talking about it. It loomed large. The war in Iran loomed large during the visit, with Trump saying he and she agreed Tehran should not have a nuclear weapon. Okay, but important that they say Trump saying. So this is from Trump's perspective. He and she agreed. So he being Donald Trump, he and she, so from China's side, agreed. Meanwhile, I know there's going to be an action taking place at the same time as another action, because that's what meanwhile means. Meanwhile, as Trump flew back to DC, okay, that's one action, so taking place. What's the other action? As Trump flew back to DC, talks hosted by the State Department secured a 45-day extension to the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon that was due to expire on Sunday. So here they're using expire as the verb, not expiration, which was the noun form. But same thing. So before they were talking about a trade truce, now they're talking about a ceasefire. So an agreement where Israel and Lebanon say, we will not fire. Cease means stop. We will not fire. So that's the agreement. But they successfully obtained a 45-day extension. So if it were meant to expire October 1st, 45 days later, November 15th. So 45-day, this functions as an adjective as well. That's why there's no S there. So now we know what these two actions are with meanwhile. So Trump flies back, 45-day extension is secured, and they happen at the same time. And here, notice I highlighted on Sunday, because before they omitted it and said to expire Sunday, or whatever the specific sentence was. But remember, on, if your IELTS exam is looming large, then make sure you use the preposition before the day of the week on Sunday. Overall, the 2-day trip was heavy on pageantry, but scant on details. About policy agreements reached by both sides. Okay, again, another reference of our adjective. So 45-day extension, 2-day trip. Overall, they're using this to introduce a summary. You use overall when you talk about the summary of the meeting, your vacation, your day even. Overall, the 2-day trip was heavy on pageantry. Pageantry, think of a pageant, a beauty pageant, for example. Well, in a pageant, it's very choreographed. People walk a certain way, they dress a certain way, they talk a certain way. It's scripted, it's practiced, it's rehearsed. That's the image. And heavy meaning it contained a lot of pageantry. So the way that they interacted with each other, their smiles, their poses, it seemed like perhaps it was scripted, practiced, rehearsed. That's pageantry. But scant on details. So scant means there were not a lot of. So scant on details. But not heavy, so light. If you wanted to use the direct opposite of heavy, you could also say, but light on details. There were not a lot of details. and then details about policy agreements reached by both sides. And that's the end of the article. So what I'll do is I'll read the article from start to finish, and you can focus on my pronunciation. Trump and Xi conclude very successful talks in Beijing, but no deals announced. U.S. President Donald Trump's closely watched visit to China this week has gone a long way towards strengthening a fragile trade truce with Beijing and stabilizing the bilateral relationship. While the visit was delayed by more than a month due to the Iran war, Trump's two-day summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping wrapped up Friday with plans for another meeting this fall. The U.S. and Chinese sides have not yet released details on specific agreements. But Trump's invitation to Xi to visit the U.S. on September 24th means the two leaders can talk in person again before the expiration of the one-year trade truce set in October 2025. The agreement lowered tariffs and rolled back rare earth restrictions after an escalation in tensions between the two countries earlier in 2025. Xi said the U.S. and China agreed to constructive strategic stability as a framework for the next 3 years, according to Chinese state media. Opening remarks and readouts offer no details beyond China's pledge to open up its market further to foreign business, which has occurred gradually over recent decades. The war in Iran loomed large during the visit, with Trump saying he and Xi agreed Tehran would not have a nuclear weapon. Meanwhile, as Trump flew back to D.C., talks hosted by the State Department secured a 45-day extension to the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon that was due to expire on Sunday. Overall, the two-day trip was heavy on pageantry but scant on details about policy agreements reached by both sides.
Do you want to keep learning English with the news? If you do, put yes, 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 put yes, yes, yes in the comments below. And of course, make sure you like this lesson, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you're notified every time I post a new lesson. And you can get this free speaking guide where I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. You can click here to download it or look for the link in the description. And here's another lesson I know you'll love. Watch it now.